Welcome to the Prime Racing League. We are heading into Belgium for a short qualifying ahead of a 22-lap race here this weekend. Coming in to this round at Spa-Francorchamps, Primary Newt is your leader in the championship, sitting at a healthy 140 points. That was 32 points ahead of Ivy in P number 2. Then you got a tie for P number 3 and 4 between Liam and Pager at 65 points. Meanwhile, Alpha brings it up in 5th with another tie in points, with Likely Griffin at 50 for P5 and 6. Baxter is 45 points at P7, Fade 32, and Epic at P number 9. And rounding out the top 10 is Reaper with 10 points, a huge 18-point drop from Ender in P number 9. As qualifying gets underway, it will be interesting to see whether or not people can keep it clean after last time out, as last time we saw a lot of carnage around Austria, and nonetheless carnage has ensued in many of these weekends so far. Though this time out I do expect to see some increase in form of consistency, with Tornado Kane facing a race ban due to a decisive decision across all of the drivers due to his standards of racing. So this time we will not see him and his pace play any factors into the standings. As we see Last Gen Newt then, one of the first out onto the track, leading the way around the circuit, with an amazing opportunity on his side to further grow his lead in this championship over those behind him. Ivy, Liam, Pager, Alpha, all of them not in this race. Baxter, Likely Griffin as well. The best driver in the standings is Ender in P number 9, who is actually in this race, giving Last Gen a huge opportunity to pull a massive margin in the championship standings and just pull away even further the gap in the constructor standings as well, with Dardre stepping in the Sauber seat to bolster that 200 points that Sauber have coming into this round, whereas Ferrari solo with Maro at trying his best this weekend to give us some points for Ferrari with 132. Williams also looking to be rough for this weekend, with only Gimli and not Pager at 124 points. And then Red Bull doesn't have Liam, but they still do have Buddha as a step-in reserve for this weekend. Sadly, this weekend does have a lot of step-in drivers for this round, and a lot of the drivers aren't here, but you do see Fade down in P10, Maro, Slav, Ender, TTB Gimli, Last Gen, Reaper, Baron, and Geordie as your regulars. Same with James there as well. As Last Gen is on his flying lap, caution flag comes out in sector 3, for we will ride on board with our championship leader to see what he can put down as the pace-setting lap. Coming through sector 1, he's already up to the top of the hill. Now all he's got to do is ascend back down the treacherous back half of Spa and its tight twisty bits that stop it from being a super high-speed circuit. Gets towards the apex, hitting it at roughly 70 miles an hour, accelerating back out, gets back over to the left, touches the grass though. That is not optimum for the acceleration back out, down to the hill. Should to use all the track, keeps it in 7th gear, keeps the momentum going round. As you straighten up, hug the left side, shorten up the track as much as you can. Now it's gonna be tight and twisty here. If you loosen up a little bit too much, you can lose quite an effective amount of time. So back over to the left to hit that right hand kink, and now it's a long drain on that EOS battery tank before you hit the chicane, as this entire section is practically flat out depending on your setup. We're going to see if it is flat out. It is for the setup at Last Gen, a couple of miles per hour. getting him back up to 197 before braking heavy for the right-hander, then into the left of the back end of the chicane, straightening it back out to set us the first lap at a 1:42.073 for the Kick Sauber of Last Gen Ute. Decent lap time then coming in for Last Gen, your championship leader, though it has been a bit of a dry spell for him in the championship standings, as Liam has dominated at Austria and Silverstone on back-to-back affairs, completely setting a different level of pace when he does arrive in into these races, though his appearances have been few and far between. As Ender Epic, the driver who has had such unfortunate races, sets a faster lap of a 1:41.819 to take the top step of the standings in the early stages of qualifying, though there is less opportunities for drivers to improve due to such a long lap here at Spa in the 1:40s compared to the 1:0.3s, 0.4s out at Austria. Drivers just don't have enough time to actually put in multiple laps. Sometimes you might even only just have enough to put in 2 if you pick up any kind of wing damage that you need to repair. However, 3 laps potentially on the board for the drivers then to set the pace if they want to burn through all of their soft compound tyres before we head over into that 22 lap race. Tyre wear can be a bit of an issue on the middle sector of this track, though there is some time to breathe for those tyres on this track in particular. Though it's not necessarily the greatest track for tyre wear, even still, these drivers will be hoping that it doesn't plague them too heavily, and they might just want to increase them tyre pressures to keep the tyres just that little bit healthier, as if you have poor pace for just one lap, you will find yourself struggling massively around Spa. Now then, just seeing the drivers circulate into the pit lane. Your standings from the first laps is a 1:41.8 from Ender, leading away Last Gen Ute, Maro, Reaper, Frozen, and then Buddha in P number 6. After that, you've got multiple other drivers with a clear pace deficit, as my keybind for transitioning the page did not work. Sorry about the delays of switching over. Missed out on the first laps then, so I'll run through them quickly again. Ender Epic 1:41.8, Last Gen 1:42.0, setting the first lap of the session, but piped by Ender Epic. He is currently in a kind of devastating P9 in the championship, but is a consistent top 3 runner before he runs into issues. Maro P number 3 with 1:42.2, and then a huge 6/10 gap to Reaper 1:42.8. Then there's another 8/10 gap to Frozen 1:43.6, as we see Reaper burning a bit of battery on this lap. Looking clean so far, as TTB yet to set a competitive lap. Same with James and Mystery Fade. Gimli retiring early into the session, so we'll be starting at the back of the grid, unfortunately for him and the Williams in the constructors. Looking very favourable for Maro to extend the lead over Williams this weekend, but still might not be enough to challenge those of the Saubers in P number 1. On another note, the McLarens are definitely in a decent position. Might even be able to overtake the Red Bulls with only that one driver in Buddha if Reaper and Geordie can deliver a good performance. 2 points behind with 58 to the 60 of Red Bull. Meanwhile, Aston Martin, definitely the team that has its weaknesses with TTB and Ender Epic. Both have solid pace, but neither of them pulling in the performances that the team would be desiring. However, the bottom of the standings, Haas, Racing Bulls, Mercedes and Alpine bring up the back of the grid. As the drivers come back out for their second attempt of laps then. Ender Epic already nearing the back end of the track as Last Gen on a lap of his own. Let's see if Last Gen can bring it to Ender Epic on this second qualifying lap then. On the soft compound tyres, burning that battery yet again to charge up for Eau Rouge and Raidillon, the iconic but very, very dangerous, as we have seen, corners at this iconic Spa circuit. It is devastating that this track is becoming a rotational circuit on the real life calendar, but hopefully it stays a mainstay in these games as it brings and delivers constantly with amazing racing, which we hope to see this time out as well, as Last Gen did destroy one of those outside brake markers, which might make it difficult for drivers that rely on them, though some drivers do use a racing line instead. But with 50% battery to get through this back end of the circuit for Last Gen New. Healthy lap time at the moment, but not necessarily an absolute stunning lap. Still a couple of issues here and there. A little bit of a twitch will hamper his acceleration down across this straight then. What would it be for his lap time as Ender Epic is charging around behind him to also find an improvement, but it's actually only it's 3 attempts down in the hands of Ender Epic, not finding any kind of time or improvement. So if Last Gen New can find that 4 attempts, he will take current pole position by over a whopping 6.5 tenths of a second, while Ender Epic comes into the pit lane 3 tenths down before even starting the last sector, where lap time to be improved is very, very hard to come by. So opts to take the early entry into the pit lane, give himself plenty of time to come back out onto the track to try and find some improvement, as Maro also still stuck in P number 3 with that 1:42.250, as Reaper now in line to start a lap of his own, as Mystery Fade takes it extremely slowly, gets out of the way to just go ahead and start his own lap with a tow coming out from Reaper. In that first sector, it might be beneficial, but it will hamper him. So he's got to judge this distance correct if he wants to gain a distant slipstream, but then not get washed with too much dirty air before getting a good slipstream again in that last sector, as a yellow flag flies out in sector 2. You got F Baron coming through the top of the hill, potentially hitting that caution zone within a couple of corners, as you see a driver completely wide off track getting out of the way not to hamper F Baron. But Last Gen New coming into the pit lane is leading the way of Ender Epic, who will definitely want to be coming out and setting an even better lap time. Mystery Fade already catching up to the back end of Reaper. This is actually going to hamper him massively through sector number 2 then, as Reaper has 80% battery, hasn't burned, gives him a decent tow, but they collide. Mystery Fade hits the back end of Reaper, who tries to get out of the way, but ends up just hogging the outside, which is not what Mystery Fade wanted Reaper to do. It seems like Reaper didn't expect Mystery Fade to want to stay on the outside, so tried to give him that inside line instead, but clearly Mystery Fade wanted the optimum line. He picks up some damage. With 4 minutes 30, he might have enough time to get back into the pits, get that wing changed, and give himself an extra opportunity. Though a lunge onto Reaper out of frustration, a bit of hairiness going into the pit lane, and gamesmanship is not what you want to see out of a driver like Mystery Fade, who definitely has some pace on his hands, but makes an awkward mistake as well at the back end of his lap, as his pit crew comes out to try and receive him. All of your top 10 then besides from Frozen, who goes wide on his outlap. All back into the pit lane as you have Cayenne Legend coming in for Mercedes as a second driver halfway through the session. Not a full lobby on our hands today of 18 drivers, but Frozen struggling a little bit on this lap. Hopefully for him, he can find some more time, but he is in front of his teammate in James BCFC with a 143.6 compared to the 143.8. And some may say, sometimes that's all you gotta do is beat your teammates. Even if we have equal performance on, if you beat your teammate, you're beating them in quote-unquote equal machinery. Though that applies much more heavily to real-world F1. And Epic with that earlier pit stop already coming back out onto track with 3 minutes remaining. It will be very, very tight for some of these other drivers when they come back on track. But Ender Epic has plenty of time to take it as slowly as he needs to warm those tyres up, but not wear those tyres out. Give him a decent little scrub over, but with this long lap, it is easy to accidentally wear your tyres down slightly. Last Gen will be quite happy with a 141.358. It is a very good lap coming out of him, though he will always win a session like this where only 3 laps are set rather than 4. Take the opportunities to potentially improve it further and pull it out of reach of drivers like Ender Epic, who races against Last Gen U across multiple other series as well. And on most occasions, Last Gen is on a different caliber of plane to Ender Epic, but mostly due to that consistency factor we have covered previously. Currently 2 tenths up on his lap time, coming into sector number 3. Not much to be gained nor much to be lost through this sector, and 2 tenths right now is not enough to see an improvement in position for Frozen, as Mystery Fade is more than 7 tenths up the road in front of him in terms of lap time. So this will cut down that gap and margin just a little bit. With the time left in this session, no other opportunities potentially on the side of Frozen, who decides to retire himself from the session after that lap time. James also out after his final attempt. Krislav finds a 1/10 improvement through sector 1, going through sector 2. This is really where you can actually find that extra lap time. Sector 1 is all about your setup and how you get onto the accelerator and how much you can carry the momentum through Eau Rouge and Raidillon, but not much technicality other than that, where sector 2 has plenty of high speed flowing corners where optimizing that entry into exit can give you so much more lap time. And that is where drivers like Last Gen and Ender can stand themselves apart. Can Krislav find himself with an improvement through sector number 2 as he comes to the end of it now? He sets a half a tenth improvement, actually losing a bit of time compared to his previous lap. Might be able to find a 10th or 2 in this last sector, but with a 3/10 margin to Frozen due to his lap time improvement, Frozen still keeps P7 on the boards for himself at the moment. Last Gen just on the bubble, as Ender has actually broken his front wing and will not be finding any kind of improvement on his lap time. Maro also on the bubble on his last lap then, as no time is left in the session. Can he find the improvement to upset Ender Epic? He needs to find 4 attempts across this middle and last sector. Not much in it between the drivers behind him for 4th place between Buddha and Reaper, but as you see, the Buddha goes off himself. So if Reaper is on a lap of his own, which he is nearly 3 temps up. Reaper might be able to steal away P number 4 on the starting grid as Mystery Fade snipes it away first. So it might only be P number 5 for Reaper on the back end of his lap, which it is. It's still an improvement, but it's only to keep the position he was in prior to Mystery Fade's massive improvement in lap time that slots him into P number 4 with a 142.455. Last Gen does find a little bit extra time, but suddenly for Maro, he does not find enough. He chips in 0.03 of a second behind Ender Epic with that final lap time, but it wasn't enough. But it is a good position for Ferrari to try and minimize their deficit to kick Sauber and maximize their gains over Williams in third place this weekend, which are their real threats in this championship standings, as Last Gen and Sauber have kind of ran away with it so far. With that then, qualifying has finished and wrapped itself up as the last drivers get out of the session and back into the pit lanes ahead of your 22 lap race around here at Spa. Not much room for a two-stop opportunity with only 22 laps on hand compared to 40 plus at Austria last time, 36 out at Austria last time out. Though the standings and order for that session: Last Gen new on pole, Ender Epic followed by Maro closely in P number 3, Mystery Fade finding a late improvement to take Reaper from P number 5, beating out Buddha in P number 6, Frozen P7, and Baron P number 8. That forms your top 8 on the grid, but really, all eyes will be at the front of this grid and to see what differences can be made in the constructors' standings, as a lot of your key drivers are not in this race in terms of the drivers' standings, and huge opportunities at play for Ferrari to find themselves massively in the lead in the constructors. But it's at the hands of Maro, their second place driver, rather than Ivy, their clinical consistency that has delivered on multiple occasions decent performances, but just like other drivers, hasn't been able to eke out that minor difference over Last Gen, and definitely not over that of Liam when he is here, as it's 5 red lights for the Grand Prix at Belgium, and underway we get. Last Gen leads us into turn number 1, collision in the back already for Buddha, who might just already be out. A spin in the background as well for F Baron, who's dropping rapidly through the grid as A Prime picks up a penalty. Baron still gets a penalty of his own, 10 seconds, but at least it's not a drive-through. Buddha retires from the session already as we charge up the top of the hill. Last Gen getting a huge slipstream on the back end, but it's all line astern except for P number 5, where Frozen gets overtaken by Reaper from the outside, goes a little bit wide on the back end of it as well, doesn't find much more, creates a little bit of gravel as well. That gives him Slav an opportunity to send it down the inside. Behind it, you've got Cayenne rapidly trying to approach, but sliding all over the place in the background. Last Gen already breaking out a second in the lead as Mystery Fade is trying to keep on the back of Maro within 3/10 at the moment, but no overtaking opportunities at this point unless you find yourself with a huge advantage in the ERS deployment, which on lap 1 you wouldn't expect to occur, as Last Gen trying to break that toe, as back in P number 9, AL is directly onto the back of TTB, late running into the session. 17 drivers down to 16 already, with 2 with huge penalties already staring them down with only 1 lap on the board. AL is completely on the back of Cayenne, but we do expect all the drivers starting on mediums and hards to be doing a one-stop strategy here today. If they was to start on Sauce, it would be 2, but a little bit of contact from the side of AL on the back of Cayenne leaves him a little bit open to TPD, but gets a decent enough traction and wants to send it on the inside again. Actually bodged the way inside, but it just leaves him tangled, sliding all over the place. But with a poor exit from TTDB behind, he doesn't actually get onto the back of them. And with this substitute driver, Williams has a chance to score some points in this race. But eyes to the front. DRS open for Enter Epic. He kept within that 1 second. But DRS train potentially forming up now behind our race leader. A place he has familiarized himself with. Leading the way when Liam and some other drivers aren't in these sessions. And very comfortable in this spot. But you have seen him struggle and falter like we did 2 weeks ago at Silverstone Reverse, where he struggled massively once that tyre wear started kicking in. But TTB falling a little bit back on the back end of Cayenne, as 5 tenths is now that braking margin. The first 1 second gap to be broken is frozen in P number 7, with AL getting past that Mercedes eventually. That being that next big gap. But it's your top 5, which we have seen like we did at Silverstone, potentially pulling away from everyone else and Krislav. But these drivers have a long way to go on these tyres to make a one-stop work. Two-stop might be a little bit favourable, but using double hards is a slower compound. Poor run through the entry of the chicane gives Ender Epic a chance to get back onto the back end, but a decent exit does neutralise that differential. F1 Jordy with a penalty on his hands, 3 seconds already for picking up warnings, as Stradre is behind him and following in P number 13. Last gen through already on, gets a decent pull and a gap. If he deploys all the CRS, he should be safe this time around, as Marrow and Mystery Fade also struggling to find that gap. Though behind you have Gimli having to put on the defense of P number 10, last point to TTB to give Aston Martins a double points finish. Huge lockup around the outside, but he still makes it stick. Gimli, your perennial points outsider, sadly for him, on that P10 cusp, not able to hold position this time around. But still, he's keeping up for now behind it. Does have a poor exit though, and that might be him seeing goodbyes to TTB's rear end, unless he can find himself finding a decent chunk of pace. Frozen does find himself back within DRS of Slav, who finds himself making a mistake and dropping 2.5 seconds now off of the front leading pack, who are all just keeping in tandem to last gen, trying to keep within DRS, but last gen putting in an effort this lap compared to Ender, and pulling 8 tenths from that previous 5 tenths on this back end of the circuit. But as we come on through, back to the start-finish straight, Ender Epic still within DRS time this time around, and that crucial 1 second gap that last gen would love to break so that he can find some comfortable rhythm and save these tyres to go even longer is starting to elude him. Gimli picks up a 3 second corner cutting penalty in P number 11, making his last lap look even more unfortunate. Going through, Radion then again, 8 tenths is the margin. This is a huge gap to have going through our Rouge. Can he utilize this to actually break that DRS? 6 tenths by the braking zone though, and Frozen is already having another driver onto the back of him as he gets past very early onto the straight, but Slav not able to capitalize in any kind of fashion, which now brings AL back into the fight, closing in on P number 7, starting way down the field as F1 Jordy picks up a 3 second penalty of his own. Baron and A Prime serving their penalties in the pits, 35 seconds and 24 off of the back end of the grid. As we are on lap number 4 for Spa at the moment. Ender Epic finding himself in a position he finds himself quite regularly, but sadly for him, it's not a position he finds himself finishing in regularly. He would love to make that a difference this time and capitalize on the lack of James and Ivy to get a solid top 2 finishing position in the Prime Racing lead, as Gimli has a huge wide excursion on that lap then. Frozen 4 seconds adrift from the top number 5, but Mystery Fade and Reaper finding themselves drop 2 and a half second to drift off the top three, completely losing touch of that front battle then, which gives a huge opportunity for the top three to pull away, set a pace, and try and run away with this race without a safety car. Then these three are now in the position to gather themselves amazing points, but that's not going to stop them trying to hunt down Last Gen and progress further ahead. As Reaper with that DRS, and with no one giving DRS to Mystery Fade, finds it easy to make that overtake, but Frozen does not make it easy for AL as he keeps position in P number 6, but Slav does lose out on his side as F1 Jordy makes it past Gimli further down the grid for P number 11. But what can AL do then on the back end of Frozen, making a huge stride for Williams to minimize this point differential that Maro has the advantage of qualifying with in this race. It is crucial that without Pager, Williams can still find some points from this race to just minimize and give themselves an opportunity to come back in the second half of the championship against Ferrari. Reaper though, still happy with P number 4, but Mystery Fade is on his back end. He sees the tail light. He sees himself with a chance to potentially make a re-overtake on this next lap, as Ale already on the back end of Frozen as well. This lap might be his opportunity, but Reaper picks up a 3-second penalty in his battle with Mystery Fade. That is going to be very, very difficult for him to deal with. Last Gen and Ender leading the way through Ready On again, with Maro just behind, finding some decent consistency. 5 seconds is the gap to Reaper as Mystery Fade, even before the DRS zone, pulls out in front with an amazing run through Al Rouge and Ready On. Takes P number 4 back 1 lap later, and behind with the helping hands of DRS, AL brings himself into P number 6 and ahead of Frozen with a 5-second gap to Reaper out in front. It is only 2 seconds factoring in that time penalty, but he will want to do it on track, as every driver will always want to do, to set a precedent to those around him. But an amazing drive for the first 6 laps then on the hands of this Williams driver to make it all the way up to P number 6. As we look further back, huge gaps forming at the outer edges of the top 6. 6 seconds between P8, P9, and another 6 to TTB on the cusp, with James now past Gimli, trying to make an effort to secure P number 10 and a double points finish for Haas and take away those honours from Aston Martin. As at the current moment, only Aston Martin find themselves as the only team with a double points finish seeing positions, though it's very, very early for that to even be on the minds of these drivers. F. Baron picks up a 3-second penalty down in P number 15 for track limits excursions then. Once again, we see Ender Epic on the back end, but this time Maro is closer, within 2 tenths, but not enough. With the DRS of Ender himself, he keeps his position and is able to swat off the efforts of Maro, even though it's a lot closer this time around. Tyre wear now starting to become a factor, making aggressive moves, also much harder to pull off then, as Frozen tries to keep up on the back end of this Williams, but it's already starting to fall adrift. This might give Slav an opportunity as he eats a lot of gravel on that inside curve. That is definitely going to break him out of DRS then, of that Williams, and is going to bring this Alpine right back into play. And it seems like his tyre wear saving has been a little bit better off than Frozen, who's been a little bit skirtish, even though his pace has been decent so far. Further back, F1 Jordy ahead of James by 18 seconds as they have already pit on lap number 7. Dropping themselves out of the points, promoting Gimli into that position just at the moment, though, as Frozan 2 seconds now adrift, which might give himself a horrible defensive position. 6 tenths is the gap between both the leader and second place then. Huge lockup on the back end of the tire life, but Last Gen is not going to feel good. It's going to feel super flat spotted. It's going to be very difficult if he keeps locking up those tires to keep them under wraps for the remaining laps that he needs to eke out of these tires for that one stop strategy, which is the primary strategy we were expecting for this race then. But 6 tenths coming to the top of the hill is not close enough in a DRS train, and with amazing DRS management from Last Gen, makes Ender not able to make up the difference. Though in this scenario, Ender Epic probably very happy just to keep on the back end of Last Gen, even if he has to use ERS in some undesirable locations to keep within DRS. He can just use that to offset the ERS of Last Gen, who has to use it in defense, as Frozan is able to keep off Slav for P number 7. And Reaper still stuck behind Mystery Fade, but has a healthy 5-second buffer that's starting to grow a little bit bigger to the driver in that Williams seat behind him, which is going to keep him safe from that penalty so long as he doesn't pick up any more. Still a long way to go, but that gravel is not what these tires need. You want to keep it in that DRS. It's going to be very difficult if you fall out to get back in, as that dirty air can be horrible even without that DRS. It can still affect you even if you're over a second behind. Currently still able to keep within that DRS zone then, even with those issues in the gravel. Slav coming through 4 attempts adrift right now as Maro pits but picks up a 10-second speeding in the pit lane penalty. A horrendous misjudgment on the braking zone might spell misfortune for the results and the ability to capitalize for Ferrari, as Maro will see himself out of the DRS train at the front and coming out potentially in a bit of traffic. For with a lot of drivers pitting behind him, he might have found himself a decent bit of clear air, though he will want to come out and set a really good lap time on those fresh tires, maybe undercut Last Gen and Ender Epic, as a undercut strategy is very effective around this circuit. Though his ideal race strategy now is that Last Gen and Ender Epic can either stay with him and he has amazing pace of his own, or if they are that little bit quicker but they're not quick enough to pull out a DRS, but they are quick enough to pull him 10 seconds ahead of P number 3. Otherwise this race is going to get very, very difficult for him to secure a top 3 with that 10 seconds looming over his head. As Mystery Fade, with a clean slate on his hands at the moment, no penalties picked up in his hands on lap number 9. We expect Last Gen and Ember to pit within the next 2 laps, rather than dragging it any further, as their tyres will start to scream. But 6 seconds is the current gap from Ender to Mystery Fade. And if that grows through this pit stop cycle and Maro comes out in front or behind, Maro will find himself with 6 attempts and 6 seconds, but 4 seconds to find. With those pit stops for Last Gen and Ender, Maro isn't able to undercut Last Gen just yet. But with the momentum coming into Al Rouge and Radion, he should clearly, with that slipstream and DRS, find himself with an undercut that will leave him with an opportunity to lead himself into the front of this race. Reaper picking up another 3-second penalty, but not able to make the overtake is Maro, but he does undercut Ender Epic on track and finds himself in P number 2 though he will fall adrift with that 10-second penalty, which must be aching at him now. He has done an amazing job to undercut Last Gen, but falling out of DRS is not what he needs right now. Ender was able to stay within Last Gen's DRS. If Maro is not, that is going to give Ender an opportunity to overtake him on track. And there's going to be all to play for Maro to keep up with Ender Epic's pace. But it is uncertain if Ender Epic's pace is going to be able to catch back up or match that of Last Gen's. If he does even get back past Maro, as on these hard compound tires, it seems like it's a lot more difficult to follow, especially with them not warmed up at the moment, as we see the DRS zone just clipped shy, but Maro finds a huge time through that final sector on the back end of Last Gen. Already back to 6/10, as Ender does not find any time back and actually grows the distance. So huge efforts on Maro on those warmed up tires to get back into DRS, which now finds himself nearly 8 seconds ahead of Mystery Fade, which will still give him 2 seconds to find before he can get that top 3 finish. It's looking back through the grid, more than a second gap now forming across the entire grid, but AL is finding his way onto the back end of Reaper, who is 2.5 seconds ahead of Mystery Fade, and through that pit stop cycle, that gap has been cut down to Mystery Fade. Does he have the pace to catch up to that P4 on track and overtake with 11 laps left? Is the question that's going to be aching on his mind. Though it definitely is the case that he will get P number 5 if he can just keep it clean, as Reaper has 6 seconds of penalties, which does keep him clear of Frozen in P number 7, who still, after many laps now, has Slav stuck on his rear end, using that DRS to keep up very effectively, but we've yet to see him make an active opportunity and chance to make an overtake. Finding himself within 0.2 of a second on lots of positions on this track, as if we look to the back to the front, Last Gen, again, on that bubble of 1 second, not able to cut through it though, but an early lockup into the stint will not make these loader tyres on Maro's car feel any better. Though, he does have a 1.6 seconds to Ender Epic, and the gap behind us grew to 7 to Mystery Fade. It is nearly encroaching a 1 second difference between him and P number 3, with this penalty looming over him. As in P number 8, Krislav is directly on the back on Frozen, actually overtakes him into the chicane, which gives Frozen the DRS, even though he's able to thwart it back off through the chicane, get back in front, but he is so close this time. It's going to be an absolute effort in defense from Frozen to thwart this one off, as we go through Radion already on that back end. DRS detection coming up now as he opens it wide open. The momentum moves to the inside just a little bit, but back to the outside is Frozen's defensive maneuver. Can he make it stick around the outside though? Yes, he does, but it's just the same for Slav. As we turn back to the left, he also finds the grip on the outside, but now back on the inside is Frozen, who doesn't find the space, and around the outside to secure P number 7. It took a few corners, it took a load of laps, but back in front is Slav now of Frozen for P number 7, as Frozen picks up a 3-second track limit excursion penalty to seal the deal, but it's still tight on track. These drivers have been took and tow across these last laps prior and after the pit stop, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be ending anytime soon. But with that wide excursion again, you gotta be thinking that Frozen on these hard tires is finding it a lot more uncomfortable than when he was on those mediums, as he is on the cusp of a 3/10 margin then. Only 2 battles on the track at the moment. The first one is between Slav and Frozen. The next one between that of Georgie and Dardre in P number 12. So AL is closing in steadily to the back end of Reaper. 1.4 seconds is the gap at the moment, but 3 attempts before Al Rouge for a very tight corner. That might give him a penalty, or at least a warning if not. But with DRS wide open, momentum, and ERS was burnt last time around, so what does he have to put on the offense? It's on the inside, gonna make it hard for Slav, who tries to keep it in. It's just the same as Slav's move, but slightly cleaner. But with a poor run, Slav might actually be able to get back at him. Not able to find himself on the outside. Nice defensive move from Frozan to keep the position on track and makes it stick around the outside for P number 7. Again, the squabble between these two is getting intenser every single lap. It is only fractions away from contact, but they are both giving themselves just enough room, and it is amazing to see drivers be able to keep it clean between themselves, especially after Austria last time out. As we are coming to the conclusion of lap 13, to start lap 14 with 8 laps left of this race, then Last Gen Youth is still your leader with a on the cusp gap of DRS over Maro. Ender Epic's a little bit adrift in P number 3, but a over 10-second gap now for Maro has opened up to Mystery Shade in P number 4, which is going to give him that window of opportunity to secure himself a P number 3, even if it's a P number 2 on track. Yellow flag through sector 1 as someone bins it at the top of Radeon. A Prime from a 50th position ends up crashing out of this race. AL on the back end of Reaper. No safety cars yet. First race that I have watched that has not occurred. Not even a VSC. A much cleaner affair, even though we have 3 DRSs out this time round in the PRL at Spa so far. As we are on lap 14, and AL is finding himself closing in on to Reaper, though the position will be his with that penalty unless he picks up one on his own. Though Slav and Frozen have been giving us a glorious battle for the last few laps as our eyes keep unlocked, and Dardre further down makes a move onto Geordie to get into P number 12. Not a points playing position, but a position he will take. On track, 8 seconds is the gap to TTB, which is another near 8 seconds to James on the cusp of the points. Huge field spread here today at Spa, as we have a lot of reserve drivers stepping in for this week's race. Sadly, we do miss the action of Ivy and a few others, but a huge gap has grew. Maro has made a mistake and has given Ender Epic a huge opportunity on track to secure P number 2 prior to this penalty, and with a decisive move to the outside will make it stick on the first time of asking. Maro's mistake costs him P number 2 on track, but and a 8-second gap down to Mystery Fade. Now has a lot more work to do. Another 2 seconds in the remaining 7 laps for him now to pull, as it keeps shrinking on the back end. Potential tire wear graining issues might be faced if he has made a huge lockup, as AL now can see the back end clearly of Reaper within that 6 temps DRS range, and Slav on the back end of Frozen still stuck there. Was able to make an overtake early on with fresh rubber. Can he make it now that they are slightly worn, or is the grip not there to make decisive moves like it was earlier on? It's going to be punishing in this dirty air, and he's been the one stuck in it for a majority of this battle. So maybe a bit of tire wear might be looming over him now. Maro still within DRS range of Ender Epic, but Last Gen gets to breathe a huge sigh of relief to lead away this race by 3.5 seconds, the biggest margin we've seen all race long. Will give him a huge rebreather and a chance to just settle down and capitalize and bring this home for his team within the last 6 laps. But Maro opens up that DRS. Will it be enough to drag him back onto the back end of Ender? Not this time around, but it does bring him a little bit closer as a huge run from AL. Gets forced to the outside already, nearly onto the grass, but isn't quite. But with that DRS flap wide open as it is, he just sails on by. Reaper for P number 5. Eyes set forward. 3.6 seconds is the gap to Mystery Fade. But with that lockup, that's going to make it much harder. And maybe even have to look backwards at Reaper if he's not careful. Though, he has got his eyes set, has the pace, and has gained plenty of positions to prove that he is willing to make this charge. As Reaper picks up another 3-second penalty, but with 16 seconds back to Krislav with penalties of his own. He is clearly safe in P number 6 and just has to keep it clean. But with the retirement of Gimli, we find ourselves facing some kind of safety car. Will it be that of a VSC or that of an actual safety car? We are yet to see. But Last Gen decides to come into the pits and take himself onto a new set of fresh rubber to give himself a huge opportunity, as Ender and Maro follow in as well with an 11-second gap to Mystery Fade. Maro gets to cut off his 10-second penalty and should still come out in front of Mystery Fade, who pits as well. AL, choosing not to pit, will come out in a provisional net P number 3 ahead of Maro, who gets rid of his penalty in front of Mystery Fade. Reaper pits as well due to the gap back to Slav, who chooses to pit as this is an actual safety car. AL will have a huge, difficult set of tyres to drag to the end of this race, but does find himself in net P3. This could have been an opportunity if he pit to catch up to Mystery Fade on track, but doesn't take the risk in the pit lane and bets on his defensive capabilities. Jumps in front of Maro as well, whose penalty isn't actually served. And that is got to be heartbreaking for Maro. Safety car comes out. By the time it goes, there's going to be 4 or 5 laps left at best, which is going to be nigh impossible for him to grow a 10-second gap over Mystery Fade. Even with his pace advantage, in honesty, I don't see it, but if he does, that is going to be one hell of a effort from Maro. With that penalty, Mystery Fade finds himself with a net P4 with penalties. And Reaper, Slav and Frozen, the drivers I said were safe, moving with their penalties, now find themselves awkwardly with Cayenne Legend and Dardre directly behind them. And if this safety car takes a multiple laps, it is going to be only a short dash to the line. Full push on hard tires to the end. What pace can any of all of these drivers bring us? Because it is going to be potentially an exciting one on our hands at the Prime Racing League here at Spa. But while we have this safety car, let's turn our eyes to the standings. Last Gen Newt is your race leader and your standings leader with 140 points. Will grow by another 25 if he hangs on to P at number 1. A restless Ender who struggles in the standings with only P number 9, but typically P3 or 4 on track before he runs into issues. Has a huge chance to gain on the likes of Ivy, Pager, James, who are not in this race, and bring himself back into it and make up for his mistakes in other races. While Mystery Fade can also gain, and Maro can bring some points in for the hands of Ferrari, but right now is actually behind their championship rivals Williams with the hands of AL, but he is on those older hard compound tires, which will be really hard to bring to the end of this race. So it's going to be epic to see what he's got. Though Ender Epic, as I have seen, is on the medium compound tires and might find himself with a clean backside if AL thwarts the early aggression from Maro, which is what he will desperately need to do because he has a penalty looming over him. But luckily for him, Krislav, Frozen and Reaper have penalties of their own, though not as much as what he has. Reaper does have a lot though by himself. Currently lap number 18 of the Prime Racing League under the safety car here at Spa. Looks like we might go for another lap under the safety car as it gets called in late actually. So 4 laps is what these drivers will have on their hands. 4 laps as the pace setter from last gen. When will he go racing? Slalom across this back end of Spa, staring down the mountain in front of him, but not a mountain of weight, a mountain in position as he potentially waits to the line. When he goes, it is going to be explosive from those behind. Coming through the chicane then. Will it be now or will it be later? Last Gen accelerates away as Ender Epic follows him on. Already lock up from Last Gen on those hard tires. Ender Epic on the mediums behind, wanting to make moves forward through the grid. Goes aggressive with the tire strategy and will want to get ahead as early as possible, as AL will be looking behind his rear mirrors in, and not just at Maro. Might just make it easy for Maro, who needs as much pace to be set down as possible to get what he can out of this. What defensive moves can you make? Not a lot, with the braking from Maro gets him through, but contact on the Mystery Fade's wing from again another side contact on to AL, but with those grippier medium tires and newer fresher rubber, he's able to make it stick down the inside as we are seeing AL tumble already down to P number 5. This alternate strategy not looking like the gamble he should have gone with, but it is cool to see that he has tried it. Behind, Frozen going really right with Reaper on his back end, trying to make something move forward. Slav already happy with the fact he's in the front of Frozen again, but has found it hard to stay in front. Frozen goes really wide onto the gravel, keeps it back onto the track, keeps it just in front of Reaper for a moment, but loses out on the re-entry to the track. Reaper with huge penalties that are staring him down will find it really difficult. And with that gravel on the tires, can Cayenne find his way forward on soft tire compound on his car? It is very difficult to make these last, but he's gonna have so much grip, and he sends it down the inside but backs out before he thinks twice about it. Switch back, can he get on the accelerator to turn number 1? And all of these drivers will have slipstream coming on through. Huge gap then back to James in P number 10, and Frozen spins around on the back end of that McLaren, still in front of James, but potentially picking up a decent chunk of wing damage and drifting out of the back of that fight as Maro right onto the back of Ender Epic on track, finds a huge run side by side, not quite, as he dips back into the slipstream as Ender Epic's actually looking forward, finally onto the side of Newt, but keeps it on the inside line, keeps position on track. Mystery Fade following through as well as AL leads Chris Slav through Reaper. No positions changed there then as they pull 1 second on to Cayenne. Dodger in B number 12 trying to make a move on to TTB. All desperate for those back end points in P number 10. But Last Gen able to keep ahead of Ender, who actually makes a move onto him instead of, looking backwards at the same time. Mystery Fade happily in P number 4. This will turn into a podium if Maro, unfortunately due to the penalty on Maro. AL 3 seconds adrift from this battle on those hard tires. Now he was not able to keep it up, but will form a train behind him of Slav, Reaper and Cayenne. This might be enough. 3 laps left, going on to 2 laps left. Maro might not have enough of a pace advantage, even on AL, with that huge tyre wear, unless he is able to put up a defensive masterclass, which might save Maro in this race. 4 racing for the lead then, as we come on to lap 21. Can any of these drivers make a move with such grippy tyres? 3 drivers on mediums, all following the back of Last Gen on those hards. Grip on their side as we go through Al Rouge and Radion. 4.7 is now the gap to AL. Keep an eye on that, and if it grows, as Maro will desperately want that to grow. Ender Epic on the back of the Lender Last Gen. He's going to have to make it around the outside. Has a lot of grip, but not enough to make it stick. Poor exit as well, gives Maro an opportunity back onto him, but it's not enough. The dirty air washes over the cars and denies any opportunities. Reaper slices through and gets past Slav. Now onto the back end of AL. He will want to get past, but even with those penalties, it won't be enough to overtake Maro in the standings. But just for on-track pride, he will want that position. Cayenne looking potentially to get P6 net on the penalties. Keeping it clean even with that lack of pace can sometimes be a huge advantage. As back to the leaders, Last Gen leading the way through the back end of this grid as we ride on board with Mystery Fade in P number 4, the driver who wants this result, but not as much as Ender Epic, the driver who was in these positions a few times this season, but hasn't came out with a solid result in a while. He will want this badly. Onto the back end of Ender Epic then. 4 tenths is the gap. Maro completely swarming him through the chicane, but not able to find much more than that. As we go through turn number 1 of this long track for the last time on lap 22. Reaper gets past AL with a huge defensive move, cuts it tight into the corner. 7 seconds is the gap. Back to AL, who has no penalties, gets back in front for the moment, but going to Al Rouge. Can he make it stick? This is going to make him lose so much time on track. It's 8 seconds now on the cusp of Maro. He nearly has P number 5. If only these drivers can keep it clean, they might be able to still get something. But with both drivers swarming on the inside of AL and being forced off of the track to keep in front of Slav, that might be the window that Maro needs to secure himself P number 3, as nothing changes on track going up to the top of the hill. Mystery Fade then, P4 on the road, will likely come home in P number 3, but it's all on that gap. Can AL bring it within 10 seconds? It is on the absolute cusp. What pace can he get? Did he get any kind of damage? And what can he do with this tire wear? Still a few more corners for him to desperately go through. He will have P5 on track, he'll have P6 on merit, P5 with penalties. But will it be P4, or will the gap be just shy as Last Gen comes through the chicane of the final lap of the PRL Racing Series here at Spa? As your race winner, Ender Epic P2, Maro P3 on track, Mystery Page P3 but promotes to P4. Reaper comes across the line, P number 5, but will drop a few positions. AL was not able to get within 10, lost just a little bit too much time, and comes behind Maro in P number 5. Cayenne keeps it clean, gets to P number 6. Krislav P number 7, 8 for James. Reaper's huge extensive penalties drops into P number 9. And Dardre snipes into the top 10 due to some penalties around him for the last point here at Spa for the Prime Racing League. And what a race we had on our hands here today. Last Gen Ute extends his championship lead to 165 points then over Ivy, who was not here today. And Ender Epic secures himself a second on track, which will promote him massively up into the standings and closes in on Pager, James, and a few others like Mystery Fade, who still comes in directly behind him with a decent champion score. But it's once again at the top step of your podium, your championship leader, coming away with a clean leading to the finish race. Last Gen Ute, once again. There will be no interviews sadly this time around for the PRL. But it's been great to have you. And the driver of the day was AL with a stunning drive back for the field. But we will see you next time for another race in the PRL Racing Series.